So the government is saying how it's important to keep education open, but by not providing us the tests, they've effectively closed down schools for 500,000 students. This is unacceptable. The campaign of fear that they waged on our citizens over the past few months is now having a knock-on effect into our schools. Shame on you for not providing our educational institutions the testing, the tracing that they deserve to make sure that our young people have every opportunity possible. Lost generation. And when I think about that phrase, it brings me sadness. A lost generation. Our generation of young people are our future. These are the children that are going to create the economies that are going to take care of you and me when we are old and incapable. The Rose family always invests in education. Always, because that's the best return on investment I think you can give any child out there. I've been complaining about the problems that we've had here in London and the UK and the world the past 7 months. And opposed to me just giving you problems, I'm giving you solutions. And that's why I decided to run for mayor here. We plan on winning. And together with your help, I plan on changing this city and showing the whole world that we can get a city back to work. We can make a proportionate response to the virus, and we can use science-based protocols. We need leaders that want to give us possibilities. We need leaders with optimism. We need leaders with solutions.
Listen.
Welcome to Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal. Joining me today are the happy pair. Welcome to Real Welcome to Real Deal. I am Brian Rose, and we are live here at London Real World headquarters to talk about education first and why our schools could be closing down again due to test and trace failures. And we are now risking what some people are calling a quote unquote lost generation of young people who have no direction, who fear never being able to have their dream jobs. This is something that concerns me a lot, and it's something that's one of my major policies as your next mayor of London. And I want to talk about this today because I have young children, and education has always been something really important in my family, and it's something that's very important to me. As Nelson Mandela once said, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. And I want to talk about that today. I know a lot of you are joining me live, and I really appreciate you tuning in. I'm going to be going to your questions in real time and talking to you and getting your feedback. If you watch this later, please leave your comments below, and I'm going to try to reply to as many as I can. But I've got questions for you. Before we get started, tell me, how would another school lockdown affect you? How would a school lockdown affect you? Could be as a parent, could be as a child, could be as a business that relies on these people in your local neighborhood to do business with you. Second thing I want to know, what do you think of our current test and trace system, no matter what city you're in? How is that working out? Also, how can we prevent creating a lost generation of young people that don't believe in their future, that don't think there is a future, that can't even think of going to a university or going to a job at this point? And finally, answer this question now. Do you think we need better leadership? And again, we're streaming live on all sorts of platforms. I'm getting all the comments coming into me. And this is a sixth in a series of shows that I've been going through to try to examine the community. And I've spoken to entrepreneurs, I've spoken to leaders in the arts, I've spoken to people in the elderly care industry, I've spoken to taxi drivers, former police officers, and I'm trying to figure out what we can do to make London a world-class city once again. I love this city. I've lived here for over 20 years. I've been a British citizen for 13 years. And for London Real, which has its 9th anniversary today, by the way, on October 23rd in 2011, I published the first episode of London Real. You can go watch it on YouTube right now. The lighting isn't the best, my hair isn't the best, and my wardrobe isn't the best, but I was out there trying to bring education to people around the world, and we've been doing it for 9 years. And so this is something that's really close to my heart because I think we can all educate ourselves at any age, but I really want to think about what's happening now with our youth. And so let's jump into this. Education has always been important to me, but that's because of my family. My family comes from generations of people that have always valued education. And I dug out some old pictures that you can see on screen here. And the black and white photo is my grandma and grandpa Benedict. That's my mother's side of the family. And this is their wedding day, and they are surrounded by their parents. This wedding, I think, took place in Arizona. And my grandmother was from Chicago. My grandpa was a cattleman in Arizona. And many of my generations of families were farmers and cattlemen. And this is what you did in America in the 1700s and 1800s, is you went west and you had to make your living as an entrepreneur. But one of the things that made my family very different is very early on, they valued higher education. And so even though my grandpa Benedict was a cattleman, he got an undergraduate degree in agriculture and in animal husbandry, so he could really understand the science behind that. And even though my grandpa Rose was a potato and barley farmer in Colorado, and I used to visit him and he used to take me out as a kid and we used to dig up potatoes, and man, it was hard work. He showed me hard work. Even though he did that, he also had a degree in agriculture, and both of my grandparents used those degrees to actually make their business better. My grandpa Benedict was one of the leading cattlemen using science when it came to his feedlots, exactly what to feed the cows when in their cycle to get the best yield. And my grandpa Rose was always using science and technology to run his farm better. He used CB radios, was one of the first technologies he embraced, all sorts of ways to test and track the weather and the rainfall. And so they really embraced this early on. And my mom told me a story recently when I was in San Diego I was filming our movie Reconnect. And she said female education was always stressed in our family. And I was like, wow, that makes sense, because my grandmother was educated, my mother was educated, my sister was educated. And she said, because I think it was my great grandfather's brother was thrown from a horse and he died. He hit his head and he died, and he left a widow behind with no means to provide for her family. And so what she did is she went to school and got a degree in teaching. And from then on, the Benedict and Rose families always made sure that not only male, but female education was stressed. So this is something super important to me. And you'll see some other pictures here alongside the black and white photo of my grandma and grandpa Benedict. You see my dad there looking pretty dapper in his 1960s suit. And he is graduating from Caltech. And what you saw in my families is that they started off in agricultural state schools, University of Arizona. And then we moved on as we got more and more generations of schooling, we started going to better schools. So my dad graduated from Caltech, the California Institute of Technology. My dad's a super smart guy, learned electrical engineering and computer science. And then they pushed it on to me. So you see a picture of me. That's me doing a science fair project when I was a kid. I was like 12 years old. And you can see me working on this crazy apparatus with this face mask. And I was building basically a vacuum tube piece there, and you saw me graduating from MIT with a degree I was really proud of. And it continues. You really see that education is important in my family, and my son Caden right now is 4 years old, and he is in school himself. And so it's important that we push education. It's something that's very important in my family and in generations, and I want to talk about it, and it's going to be always something that's part of my policies and for my life. And just as a story, my teenage daughter is in school right now, and she was getting a little stressed out recently about how much college would cost. And she said, I'm worried that you're paying too much for my current school and my future school. And I said, the Rose family always invests in education. Always, because that's the best return on investment I think you can give any child out there. So this is super important for me. And for the past 9 years, we have been educating the world when it comes to London Real. And we also have London Real Academy, where we've graduated 5,000 students in over 107 countries. So this is something that's in my DNA. It's in my blood. It's in my veins. It comes from hundreds of years of generations of my family before me. And that's why I want to talk about this today, because what we're seeing right now in the UK, it's a travesty. And the first thing I want to talk about is that the test and trace failures are closing down our schools. So the test and trace failures, as in the lack of availability of COVID tests, is really hurting our education system. And the General Secretary of the NAHT, which is the National Association of Head Teachers, Paul Whiteman, recently commented that, quote, tests need to be readily available for everyone so that pupils and staff who test negative can get back into school quickly. He went on to say the government assured us that this would be ready, but at the first sign of stress, it seems to be falling over. And he finished, this will put the successful and sustainable return of schools at serious risk. And so they went on to survey 736 school leaders by the Leadership Union, and they found these stats. And I want to show you this on screen. And this is what's quite alarming to me. Currently, 82% of schools have children that are currently absent because they cannot get a test. 82% of our schools have absent children because of this. But it goes on further. 45% report staff are currently not at work because they cannot get a test. Again, the government failures is having a massive impact on our education system. And if you go even further, you find out that only 14% have had confirmed cases of COVID-19 in their schools. So again, here you see a massively disproportionate response to the virus. We have a small number of actual confirmed cases, and yet most of our schools and many of our leaders and teachers cannot report to school because they can't get the tests they need in a timely fashion. This is a massive failure by our government, and it's causing a disproportionate response to this virus because they are not able to get us the science that we need. And this is what I've been talking about for the past few months. And it's really affecting our schools. It's affecting our education system, and it's affecting and turning our kids into what we're calling a lost generation. And if you go even further, Jeff Barton, who's our General Secretary of the Association of School and College Leaders, warned, quote, "Chaos is undermining the efforts to keep schools open, with more than 200 head teachers reporting delays in getting tests." This is very serious. And when you go even further, Kevin Courtney, who's the Joint Secretary of the National Education Union, said the government needed to do more. He said, quote, "Heads have told me they find it extremely frustrating because they have made their schools COVID secure, but then they find out it's been undone by the lack of tests." And when you actually go into the Department for Education, you ask them to find out what is actually going on. Unfortunately, they've been reticent to provide the numbers of confirmed COVID-19 cases among school pupils, saying, quote, "It won't provide a running commentary." So again, our government is not providing us the tests, which means our schools are suffering. We've got 82% of the schools now that are currently have students that are absent. 45% of staff currently not at work because they can't get a test. This is the government's failures, and it's now eating into our education. It's affecting our students. And again, we see a lack of leadership with the test and trace system. We see a disproportionate response to the virus because we're shutting down schools and holding back teachers when a small percentage of students are testing positive. And finally, we're seeing a complete lack of science-based decision-making because we cannot get the tests back into the people's hands that need them right away. And we all know the stories out there of children that can't get tests fast enough, so they have to isolate, their children have to isolate, and it's closing down our education system right now, and it's just not acceptable. So I want to get your thoughts right now. Please, wherever you're watching this, type in and tell me, how would another school lockdown affect you as a parent, as a student, as a teacher? Tell me, what do you think of our current test and trace system and its failures? How can we prevent ourselves from creating a lost generation? And do we need better leadership? And again, just looking for your comments coming in here right now because it's really important to hear from you. And some great comments are coming in here. I really appreciate a lot of you. We've got someone on YouTube that says, "Brian, hurry up and become the mayor, then the prime minister." Okay, look, I appreciate your thoughts and I appreciate the support. And look, you bring up a great point. I've been complaining about the problems that we've had here in London and the UK and the world the past 7 months. And opposed to me just giving you problems, I'm giving you solutions. And that's why I decided about 10 days ago to run for mayor here. We plan on running, we plan on winning, and together with your help, I plan on changing this city and showing the whole world that we can get a city back to work. We can make a proportionate response to the virus, and we can use science-based protocols to get our city working again. I think London can be the model for every city in the entire world. I think we can show New York City how to do it, Los Angeles how to do it, Tokyo how to do it, Cape Town how to do it, Paris, Madrid, and that's what I plan to do as your next mayor of London. We've got Jacone on Instagram saying the best job for you is London mayor. You are a real American and a Londoner. I really appreciate that. It really means a lot that you're giving us this support. We've got Dave over here on social media says Brian for mayor. I really appreciate that. Renee on Instagram says happy anniversary. I appreciate you. 9 years we've been doing this in the game, and I really appreciate you being here. It really means a lot. Neil Bird, Life says, quote, "You're doing great, Brian. You're generating hope for us all. Keep moving forward. I appreciate you." Jamie from Instagram says, "Thanks for the great work you're doing, spreading awareness and encouraging open debate."
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, Visit our website, londonreal.tv, or click the link in the description below.